All right, guys, we'll get going here. So I'll get back to the computers. We're on the home stretch. Won't be much longer. We'll get the test going, and you guys will be on your way.
Yep. Where we at? Okay.
All right. Bring your pointer over, and then click.
Oh.
Release, click.
Okay.
Yeah, now we're talking about camshaft installation.
Okay.
So switch our overhead view. Moving on to the next engine. Out right there. All right, guys, so we already did the rear of the gear train there, and we talked about the either A, either B, the oil pump, and installing the vacuum pump to the rear of the engine, and then we installed the flywheel housing and that hidden bolt in either gear D. So, and then we demonstrated that vacuum pump installation. So now, after we discussed the cylinder head installation, we moved the overhead camera overview to our next engine here with the cylinder head installed. And we can start looking at the camshaft proper positioning here, and talking about the scenario of incorrectly positioning the engine and incorrectly installing the camshaft. So we just want to take a minute here and show you this, what it looks like, and what you're able to do or not do when the crankshaft is not in the appropriate position for camshaft installation. So I moved the engine crank a little bit. Yep. And now we'll get that camshaft in there. And Mike's going to try to get this thing lined up. But we know that he's not going to be able to do that because of the crank position.
All right. Well, one of the things I just attempted to do was line that B mark up with the head. The closest I could come is I'm directly below the surface. Now I'm only going to move 1, 2. Remember, we want to split that B. There's 1 tooth, guys, and now look. So no matter what I do, I'm either above or below. So I'm just taking it nice and slow. 1, 2. And once again, the B mark is completely disappeared. So when you see that, now it's time to lift the cam out and rotate the engine exactly 1 revolution.
Yes. Mind you, the mark is lined up on the crank pulley. So the marks are lined up, but we're just 1 revolution out with the crankshaft.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and rotate the crankshaft 1 revolution here with the camshaft removed. Okay, so one rotation.
Look at how nice. I don't know if you guys can see that, but here, you look down using the top of the head as a reference point. You can see, I would only be able to see about half of that B. But like before, I was either completely below or completely above. I could not correct that no matter what I did. And all we did was rotate it at 1 time with the cam removed. Boom, right in place. Okay?
So now we can move on here. There it is. So again, just another up close and personal view of how we are turning that B into an M with that business card. You can do the same thing with a feeler gauge too, but you guys get the point, right? So understand that crankshaft needs to be in the proper position, so that way we can achieve this mark position with the camshaft gear. All right, Mike is installing the 3 cam journal caps there for the camshaft to just, hold it in place there. Yeah, so remember with these caps, you have the journal number. So this one here says S2, but also remember the shape of this machine surface here. It's kind of like an arrow. So the point of this mark is going to point to the front of the engine. And again, with lubrication, it's always a good idea to pre-lube these cam bearings, preferably with engine oil. Lubricate 105 is okay, but preferably use 1540 engine oil for that. Okay. And now for the slide that we're looking at here, it's time to go ahead and get our rocker assembly ready to go and installed on the engine. But pay close attention to this rocker shaft. When you have your rocker shaft disassembled for inspection purposes, you've removed the rockers, you've removed the pedestals, you've inspected the shafts. And you're getting ready to go back together. Oh, that isn't the one because the bolts are in the trailer. Sorry. Let me show you this here real quick. So when you're working on these cam shafts or rocker shafts, this is the front here. The direction of the shaft is critical. If you install the shaft or the rocker arms to the shaft incorrectly and it's backwards, you can do it, but your bolt spacings won't match up. They won't line up to the threaded holes on the cylinder head. So pay attention to the order of which things came apart. So you'll remove your number 1 cam pedestal here. Okay, it just slips right off. And then it goes rocker arm. And then we have this wave washer. So this wave washer goes in between the 2 rocker arms. Okay. There's nothing in between the rocker arm and the cast iron pedestal. There is machined friction surfaces here on the rocker and the machined surface on the cast iron pedestal there. So there's nothing in between the rocker and the pedestal. This off here. There's the number 2 pedestal, and here is the marks that we were showing you on the slide. And I'll get a little closer for you. Yeah. You can see, maybe, there's 2 dimples right here. Those 2 dimples, they need to be on the top side and on the front end of the rocker shaft. You guys see those?
Yes.
Well, it's really important that you identify those 2 markings because the workshop manual doesn't necessarily call this out. This is something that you'll come across if you incorrectly assemble this unit. So that's why we include it in the instruction in the training book here in the course. So pay attention to that and assemble things in the correct order, and you'll be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back together now. Again, it's going to go pedestal, rocker, washer, rocker, pedestal. loosely install these end bolts. You don't want to tighten those up on the bench because these end pedestals, they need to move so we can align our studs and bolts here for the end cam cap / pedestal. Because again, the cam caps are part of this pedestal on the front and the back. So, back over here. So yeah, you'll notice if those two bolts are too tight on the end, you're going to have a real tough time getting things lined up. And when you go together, make sure that your rockers are kind of in the down position here, so that way the cam lobes don't fight you. Yep. Okay. Looking good. Just properly seat everything. Yep. And this is the part where it's nice to have your rocker adjusters backed off, so that way nothing is stressed when you're tightening the rocker shaft bolts. So you don't want to be opening a valve as you're torquing the rocker shaft down, because that's going to prevent your components from seating properly. So you always want to make sure that these adjusters are backed off and your pedestals are seated nicely with the cylinder head. And again, remember those bridge caps. Make sure they're all accounted for and in place before you torque your rocker assembly down. So once your rockers are in place, it's going to be tough to get those caps back in there. And same concept, guys. We're going to start from the middle and then work our way out. Okay, snug them all down. Seat your end caps. Start with the center stud. Go on that side. And we'll be torquing your heavy rocker shaft bolts to final torque value. Which again, I am not using a torque wrench. This is just for demonstration. All right. Then we can move on.
Okay, guys, this is what the workshop manual refers to as a functional inspection, whereas probably every one of us on this call, myself and Justin included, have always referred to it as a valve adjustment. So for years, this was very difficult to find in the workshop manual. Well, in the lower left corner, if you look where it says engine mechanical, Isuzu diesel engine, these are the series of things you're going to need to click on. Then you'll come down, when you click on Isuzu diesel engine, you'll see another subfolder for functional inspection. And then you'll come down a little further and you'll see it there. And then, and only then, you will find your valve lash adjustment procedure with the specifications. So let's take a look at how things have changed. Number one, valve adjustment must be done when it's cold. If you were to attempt this on a hot engine, everything is expanded. We're talking thousandths of an inch here, guys. It will affect your readings. So you need to do it cold. Back in 05 through 010, the valve lash was 16 thousandths on both the intake and exhaust, and the adjustment interval was at 52,000 miles. As of 011, this valve lash increased to 24 thousandths on both the intake and exhaust, and the interval actually dropped to 50,000 miles. As of 2014, it's either 50,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first. So look at our instructions here. We want to rotate it to top dead center on cylinder number 1. Well, how do we know that it's on cylinder number 1? We've seen that before. We could either be on TDC 1 or TDC 4. Well, it's a real simple check there, guys. The valve cover is going to be off. If you grab a hold of your rockers, and you're at top dead center of compression, both of those valves are closed. So the rockers will not be making contact with the valve. You'll be able to wiggle them. And I'll show you that right now. To assure you that we're on number 1, you come over, you can move them. You try that on number 4, forget it. Okay? Now the only reason I'm getting any movement is Justin has everything backed right off. But now that we have it down, we can start snugging these down a little, and you'll know immediately. Now, if you're chest checking, you bring one into your shop and it's time for a valve adjustment, the first thing you need to do is verify whether it needs it or not. So bring it around to TDC number 1. It'll be cold. Check the valve lash. If it's within spec, leave well enough alone. If it needs an adjustment, then by all means do so. These are maintenance intervals. If the valve lash is not done properly, or if it's in need of one, it's going to affect the performance of the engine. If the guy before you adjusted it and didn't do it properly, if you tighten them too tight, the valves will stay partially open even when they're supposed to close. It's going to mess with your compression. If he did it not tight enough, you're going to have a chattering sound, and when it comes time to open the valve, they may not open as far as they should if you have too much clearance. This is critical. It has to be done right. But don't underestimate that cold engine. Remember, we're talking thousandths of an inch here. A hot engine, these things will expand a couple thousandths of an inch. That's enough to throw your reading off completely. So pay close attention to that, and we're going to demonstrate that this is a two-part adjustment. Because think about what you got going on here. Take, for example, number 1 cylinder. You have 4 valves, but you only have 2 rockers. 1 rocker is going to open 2 valves. Well, how does it do that? It's going to come down and it's going to contact the bridge. So that bridge, which is going to operate 2 valves, has to be adjusted properly, or you're going to favor one side over the other. It has to come down true, and we're going to demonstrate that right now, guys. Okay?
So, yeah, so we have our rocker adjusters backed way off, because remember we installed the rocker assembly in a relaxed state. But if you guys are coming in here to check valve clearance, things are going to be tight. Your adjusters are not going to be loose, and you're going to inspect the lash, the clearance first. So before you loosen anything on just a random routine inspection, you're going to check your clearance here with your thickness gauge or your feeler gauge first, and then adjust as necessary. So again, like the procedure calls for, we're using a 24 thousandths feeler gauge, and this 24 thousandths is going to be used for both the intake and the exhaust. Okay, so the long rocker, the first one, intake, next one, exhaust, all the way down to number 4. In this first position, this first crankshaft position, TDC number 1, you're going to be doing the intake and exhaust for number 1, intake for cylinder 2, and exhaust for cylinder 3. And then you're going to rotate the crankshaft 1 revolution. You're going to do intake exhaust for 4, intake for 3, and exhaust for 2. Okay? So, focusing on cylinder number 1 here, obviously we have a big gap here because we loosened up our adjusters by a lot. So what we're going to do is I'll just run this down just to get slight tension here on our thickness gauge. Okay, just feel it. Just back it off a little bit here. And then we want to focus on our bridge adjustment, which I didn't loosen up those adjusters. Okay. Yeah, so your bridge adjustment, you want to make sure that the goal here is that we have even contact between the back of the bridge and the front of the bridge. So all you need to do is take your screwdriver and with your fingertips on the shank of the screwdriver, just with slight pressure, feel for that point in time where you feel just the point of contact with this adjuster screw, which is right there. So once you feel contact, you stop, and that's where you need to be. And then you'll tighten your adjuster screw, jam nut, and then you'll go back and inspect your lash adjustment at your rocker. Okay, and just a little bit more there. That's about right. Run down with your jam nut, and then you lock that jam nut in place. Verify your lash adjustment. So pretty simple. Again, we'll do the other one here just so you can see, which I'm sure you guys have done this many a time. You can probably do it a lot quicker than I can. So we'll back off that adjuster screw. Okay. Get your thickness gauge in there. Run your adjuster down. Come in contact with your feeler gauge. So you have slight pressure down on that valve bridge. And again, you're taking your screwdriver just with fingertips and feeling just for the point of contact right there. Run down your jam nut. Lock it in. Double check your valve adjustment. There. Lock your jam nut. And you're good. That one was a little tight actually, but you're good.
Guys, anybody know what's going to happen if you over tighten that adjustment nut on the bridge? What do you think the result is going to be there?
But on the bridge, if you over tighten it on the bridge, one valve might open more than the other.
That's right, because you're going to actually start lifting it. You're going to be favoring the opposite valve, 100%. That's why we're so adamant about backing it off completely. And all it has to do is come down and make contact. That's it. Because once it's touching, that means we're at a neutral position there. We're going to operate both valves equally. Remember, one rocker will actuate one bridge, but one bridge is going to actuate two valves. So it has to be in that neutral spot. It can't favor one side or the other.
Yeah, and I actually have a better,
you're in good shape.
I have a better visual set up here for you guys. So
yeah, this is nice. You can see it here.
Just focusing on that bridge adjustment. Okay. There, you guys get a good side profile view of that bridge. And let me run it in a little bit closer. It's a good thing I'm not a cameraman by trade. I'd be out of a job. Okay. So you can see the adjuster here, and I've loosened it, but you can see as I tighten this bridge adjuster down, this side starts to lift with the adjuster screw. It's kind of hard for you guys to see that. But basically now with this over extended, when our rocker arm pushes on the button here on the cap, it's going to first apply pressure here, but at an angle. And we're actually twisting on top of this guide. So the bridge is no longer pushing down straight. It's kind of forced in one direction. So you're going to prematurely wear that guide, that bridge guide, and also you're going to be opening your valves differently. One's going to be open more than the other. So again, it's easier to tell the point of contact when your rocker arm adjuster screw has a little bit of pressure at this point, and then you'll run your screw, your adjuster screw on your bridge down just to feel the point of contact right there. And that's why I put that feeler gauge in there first at that thickness. It's almost providing that pressure at this point, so that way you can feel a more definitive stop with your bridge adjuster screw. So if you do your bridge adjuster screw only and you have no pressure here, you could potentially overextend this adjuster and over adjust it. So yeah. Does that answer your question? Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about as easy as it gets. Some manufacturers have you come down and touch it, and then they would have you go an additional flat. They use the nut as a reference point too. But that's without the feeler gauge in there. Now, the way we do it, you have that definitive stop. As long as you made contact, you're good. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Not bad. But the thing is, when it's done properly, especially if you're correcting someone else's mistake, if the guy before you didn't adjust it properly, a do-it-yourselfer that said, I'm not taking it to a dealer, I could do that, and his truck is running horrible, and then you fix it, and his truck is running sweet, you're a hero. And you deserve to be, because that's why you're the professional. And I say that because I think we're all a part of the same team here, guys, you know? It wasn't long ago I was doing exactly what you're doing right now, and so was Justin.
Yep.
Just I switched roles. That's it. Okay.
His hands are clean. He lost his calluses.
That's right. I lost my calluses. You know, my wife told me I got civilized. I don't know. At least she doesn't know me fully, though.
All right. All right, guys. So moving on, you know, we have other topics to bring up here, but while we're here at this point, I feel it's appropriate to bring up the injector installation. It's going to come up again once we talk about the long block construction here coming up. But guys, when you are installing your fuel injectors, you know, we want to make sure that you're following the proper sequence, the order with installation here. So, you know, obviously with new seals, new O-rings, maybe new injector, you're programmed, you've already programmed their flow rates, you've seated that injector, and looking at the procedure, the injector procedure, there's a new step that they added. We have to add the molybdenum.
Yep.
Disulfide lubricant to the threads and engine oil to the underside of the head of the bolt. So we want to make sure these threads are properly lubricated and the underside of the hold down bolt is properly lubricated. And you're not going to torque this hold down bolt until we have properly seated the high pressure feed pipe. All right, so just finger tight with the hold down bolt, and then you're going to take your brand new high pressure injection pipe and connect that to the fuel injector.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
When we get to that point, when I'm at work, right, what you're talking about, before I put the bolt in, the hold down for the injector, I have a little air tool with a long extension that I clean out the whole of all the oil, especially the back ones, because otherwise the bolt can break.
So you're talking about the hydraulic lock?
Yes,
There.
yes, because all the oil, especially, all of them, especially the middle back ones, but I do all of them. If you don't get the oil out, you can tighten it, it either break or it'll torque and it really won't be tight.
Right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree with that. That is a good step to take. Good caution to take there. That's the wrong line too. I thought I had it all right here. All right, guys. We've got a little variety of parts here. There we go. That looks better. All right. All right. So, yeah, John, that's actually, that's a really good point, and thank you for bringing that up because that's something that's not included in the steps in the workshop manual. So if your hole is full of oil and you tighten down that hold down bolt, you might be misled with the torque. So good point. Now just back to this here. We've hand tightened the hold down bolt. We've hand tightened the high pressure feed pipe. We'll go ahead and position the return or the leak off pipe to the injectors with new seals, right? And we have not torqued anything yet. Everything is just kind of getting in its sweet spot, making sure all the relationships are good here. So with everything hand tightened, what you're going to do then is torque the hold down bolt to the appropriate spec, all right? And then you're going to then torque the sleeve nut for the injector, and then you will go down to the rail and torque the nut on the rail, followed up by clamping your P-clips or your clamps for your high pressure feed pipes. And then torque the leaked off pipe connections. And then of course, to finish it off, you'll have to install your harness and torque your terminals on your harness to the appropriate spec.
Yep.
Wouldn't you want to tighten your clamps before you torque the nuts?
The P-clips, these clamps here?
Yeah.
Again, you want to make sure that you maintain this relationship here with the high pressure connections. I recommend, and I actually believe the procedure tells you to do the clamps and then the nuts, but I prefer doing the nuts first, the sleeve nuts. That way you know that you have a good connection here at your injector and at the rail, and then finish off by torquing your clamps. Your clamps would be hand tightened at this point, so everything's positioned. We do have room for flexibility here because they're rubber isolators, so they're a little forgiving, and they're gonna flex a little bit with the pipe position there.
Yeah, I've had the pipes actually per se bend a little bit when I tighten the clamps, so that's why I've always done the clamps and then the nuts.
Yeah. Again, if you know for sure you're torqued and in your position with the sleeve nut, that's that critical connection there. If everything is hand tightened and everything's positioned, hold down sleeve nut at the rail, then your clamps. You should be good to go.
Okay.
So, and then again, the injector harness, make sure you don't over torque those studs because they will break. All right, guys. Moving on here. It's 3 o'clock. We'll keep on trucking. Back to this topic, the flywheel flex plate and the indexing marks. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this. You guys remember the conversation that we had about the importance of the index marks to the flywheel and flex plate, and then also proper positioning of the washer with that beveled edge.
All right. Wait a minute, I'll fix that.
There we go.
I was looking at something, I didn't realize I was messing with the.
Oh.
This is where we were, right? And then we. And
No,
then
next
what?
page. Right there is where we're
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, so, all right.
It's actually my first time hearing about that white marking on the flywheel from you guys.
Yeah, that's actually, that white mark is there actually from the factory.
I mean, I've seen it before, but I didn't know what the purpose of it was, you know. So I would just remove my flywheel and then install it back on. But I didn't know that was like an alignment marking.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, and if I go over here in the parts warehouse and I look at a brand new crate engine, they're all marked the same way for indexing. Because of those weights, right? Because, again, this is a spinning object and it's balanced, and we have these weights that are welded on there, so. Yep. Very good. All right. Mike, I'm going to advance.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm good.
All right, guys. So next we have some tools here, cylinder head tools. So these are mainly tools that will be used with the cylinder head removed. So basically you have your injector cup service tools for removal and installation. That swedging tool there to expand the tip of that copper injector cup, to make that good seal between the cylinder head and the injector cup. So, these are all essential. You should have these at your dealership. So you have the sleeve remover, installer, ball, sleeve installer, and the pipe oil seal installer. There's that 43269 tool that I completely forgot about earlier, number 5. And then you have the valve guide remover installer tool, item number 6 there. And then you have the valve stem and bridge guide installers.
Okay, guys, the next slide here you're looking at is if you're going to try to service this head with it installed, the one on the left is for 05 through 010, and basically what you're looking at is the injector sleeve nozzle remover. You got kind of like, it's kind of like an easy out. It goes in there, grabs a hold of it, and then you're going to use the tool to get it out, to remove it. On the other hand, the 2011, number 7, injector sleeve puller bridge. It's a nicer design, I think so. And it goes down there, and you're going to use that to grab hold of it and to remove it as well. But either way, this is for if you're about to service it with the head installed. A little bit different procedure, a little bit different tooling, but the end result will be the same, okay? So, I mean, there's many times we did injector cups, we used to call them the sleeves, whatever you want to call it, over the years where, you did not want to remove a cylinder